The massive alien ships filled the entire sky above the human colony world. These weren't normal metal spaceships like humans built. No, these were alive. The Vorthak Empire had grown their warships from giant space creatures, and now hundreds of them floated above the planet like deadly jellyfish made of bone and flesh. Their hulls glowed with bright blue and green lights that pulsed like heartbeats. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Each ship was the size of a small city, covered in what looked like armor made from living coral. Strange tentacles hung down from their bellies, crackling with electric energy. Admiral Thexmar stood tall on his flagship's bridge, watching the last human ship explode into a ball of orange fire. His insect-like face showed pure satisfaction. His forearms gestured wildly as he clicked his sharp mandibles together, making sounds that his crew understood as laughter. The bridge around him was unlike anything humans had ever built. Everything was organic and alive. The walls breathed slowly like lung tissue. The control panels were made from modified creature shells that responded to touch. Slime dripped from the ceiling, but it was all perfectly normal to the Vorthak crew. "Send the message," Thexmar ordered his communications officer, a smaller Vorthak whose head was covered in tiny glowing spots. "Tell every world in the galaxy what happened here today. Let them all know that humanity's foolish dream of exploring space is finished forever." The communications officer's spots flashed rapidly as he sent the victory message across the galaxy's quantum networks. Within hours, every major alien civilization would know that the upstart humans had been crushed completely. The message traveled through space faster than light, reaching the crystal cities of the Helix Federation first. These beings were made of living diamond and had ruled their part of the galaxy for thousands of years. When they received the news, their crystal bodies chimed like bells in what sounded like approval. Next, the news reached the Drift Collective, strange gas beings who lived in the clouds of giant planets. They had no solid bodies, existing as intelligent storms that could think and build amazing technology. Their cloudy forms swirled with satisfaction when they learned of humanity's defeat. Finally, the message arrived at the mechanical worlds of the gear assembly. These robots had replaced their original creators long ago and now built massive factory worlds that never stopped working. Their computer minds calculated that humanity was no longer a threat to galactic stability. All across the galaxy, alien leaders nodded their various heads, tentacles, or energy fields in agreement. The humans had tried to expand too fast, claiming planets in areas that belonged to older, more powerful civilizations. Now they had learned their place the hard way. But there was something none of these ancient alien powers knew. Something that would have made them much more careful if they had understood the truth. The human colonies they had just destroyed were protected by only a few old patrol ships. These vessels were decades old, built when humans were still learning how to travel between stars. They were never meant to fight a real war against a galactic empire. The real human military was still back home, hidden in the dark spaces around Earth's solar system. For over 200 years, while humans sent out peaceful colonists and traders, their best engineers and scientists had been building something else entirely, something that no alien civilization had ever imagined possible. In the cold, empty space beyond Earth's outermost planets, 12 massive shapes waited in complete silence and darkness, ready to show the galaxy what humans could really do when pushed too far. The news of humanity's defeat traveled through space for 3 long days before reaching Earth. When it finally arrived, the message hit Earth's communication networks like a lightning bolt. Every news station, every government office, every military base received the same terrible footage at exactly the same moment. Deep beneath the surface of Earth's moon, in a massive underground complex that most humans didn't even know existed, Fleet Admiral Lee Minho sat alone in his private office. The room was simple but impressive, with thick metal walls and a single large window that looked out into the blackness of space. Minho was a man in his 60s, with grey hair and deep lines around his eyes that came from decades of making difficult decisions. His uniform was perfectly pressed, but his hands shook slightly as he replayed the battle footage for the 10th time. On his screen, he watched human ships explode one by one. These weren't just military vessels being destroyed. These were ships full of families, scientists, teachers, and children who had traveled to distant worlds hoping to build new lives. Now they were all gone, turned into glowing debris floating. In the darkness of space, the Admiral's face showed no emotion as he watched, but inside he felt a cold anger building. For 200 years, humanity had followed a simple rule when exploring space: go in peace, make friends when possible, but never show weakness to those who mistake kindness for fear. A soft knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. Commander. Park Jisoo entered the room, carrying a digital tablet in her hands. She was young for her rank, probably in her early 30s, with short black hair and intelligent eyes that missed nothing. "Sir," she said quietly, "the Terran Defense Council is calling an emergency meeting. All the world leaders want to know how we're going to respond to this attack." Minho nodded slowly and stood up from his chair. He walked to the large window and looked out into the empty space beyond Luna's orbit. To most people, it would look like nothing was there. Just empty blackness dotted with distant stars. But Minho knew better. His trained eyes could make out the faint shadows that floated in the darkness. Massive shapes that had been waiting patiently for over 2 centuries. They were so big that they blocked out entire sections of stars, creating holes in the night sky that only someone who knew what to look for could spot. "Commander Park," he said without turning around, "send a priority message to all department heads. Tell them it's time to wake up our sleeping giants." Park's eyes widened slightly. She had heard rumors about something called the Dreadnought protocol, but like most people in the military, she had never seen any proof that it actually existed. "Sir, are you sure? Once we activate that protocol, there's no going back. The whole galaxy will know what we've been hiding." Minho finally turned away from the window, and Park could see something dangerous burning in his eyes. It wasn't anger, exactly, but something colder and more determined. "The aliens made their choice when they decided to murder innocent human families," he said quietly. "Now they're going to learn why Earth has stayed unconquered for thousands of years." The emergency meeting that followed lasted less than an hour. Representatives from every major nation on Earth gathered in the underground conference room, their faces grim as they watched the battle footage and listened to Admiral Minho's recommendations. When the vote was called, it was unanimous. After 2 centuries of careful preparation and patient waiting, humanity would finally show the galaxy their true face. In the cold darkness beyond Neptune's orbit, something incredible began to happen. For over 200 years, 12 massive objects had floated silently in the empty space between planets, so far from the sun that they were almost invisible. They looked like dead asteroids to anyone who might accidentally discover them, but they were actually humanity's greatest secret. Now, for the first time since they were built, these sleeping giants were waking up. The first sign of life was a tiny blue glow that appeared along the hull of the largest ship. Then another light flickered on, and another, until thousands of small lights began racing across the surface like electric lightning. The ship was 15 kilometers long, roughly the size of a small city lying on its side. It was so massive that it had its own gravity field. Captain Kim Dae-ho stood on the bridge of this incredible vessel, watching in amazement as his ship came alive around him. He was a tall man in his 40s, with steady hands and the kind of calm confidence that came from years of training for this exact moment. His uniform bore the name Terra's Vengeance on the shoulder patch, though no one outside of Earth's most secret military programs had ever heard that name before. The bridge itself was unlike anything seen on Earth's normal spaceships. It was enormous, with a curved ceiling that stretched up 3 stories high. Massive view screens showed the blackness of space in every direction, while hundreds of control stations buzzed with activity as the crew worked to bring their ship online. "Fusion reactors are warming up, Captain," called out one of his officers. These weren't small reactors like the ones that powered Earth's cities. Each of the ship's 12 reactors was the size of an entire city block, capable of producing more energy than some small planets used in a year. The ship's hull was made from something that didn't exist anywhere else in the galaxy. Human engineers had spent decades learning how to process asteroid metal in zero gravity, creating an armor that was harder than diamond but lighter than steel. Under the distant light of the sun, the hull gleamed like polished silver. Lieutenant Choi Hana sat at her weapons station, watching as systems that had never been tested in real combat came online for the first time. She was young but brilliant, chosen for this mission because she had the fastest reflexes of anyone in the human fleet. "All weapon systems are responding perfectly, Captain," she reported, trying to keep the excitement out of her voice. "The main particle cannon is charging, missile tubes are loaded, and the point defense grid is fully operational." But the most impressive system on the ship was its faster-than-light drive. While other species in the galaxy used various methods to travel between stars, humans had developed something completely new. The Alcubierre drive could bend space itself, allowing the ship to travel vast distances almost instantly. Around the Terra's Vengeance, 11 other ships were going through the same awakening process. Each one was slightly different, designed for different types of combat, but all of them were enormous and powerful beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. The ships had names that reflected humanity's determination: Terra's Hammer, Sol's Fury, Earth's Shield, Luna's Sword, and others that spoke of humanity's love for their home system and their willingness to defend it. As the ships powered up, their crews worked with practiced efficiency. These weren't ordinary sailors or soldiers. Every person on these ships had trained their entire lives for this mission. They were the best pilots, engineers, gunners, and tacticians that humanity had ever produced. The awakening process took several hours, but finally, all 12 ships reported ready for action. They had been sleeping for 2 centuries, but now they were fully awake and ready to show the galaxy what human engineering could accomplish when pushed to its limits. In the distance, Earth's blue marble hung in space, unaware that its greatest protectors were finally stirring from their long sleep. The journey through the dark emptiness of space took exactly 31 days. The 12 massive human ships moved through the void like silent ghosts, their hulls cutting through space without making a sound. They traveled faster than light itself, bending the very fabric of reality around them as they raced toward their destination. Inside the Terra's Vengeance, life continued at a steady pace. The ship was so large that it felt more like living inside a floating city than a military vessel. There were entire sections that most crew members never visited, including parks with real trees, recreation areas with swimming pools, and even small shopping districts where people could buy things they needed. Captain Kim Dae-ho made it his habit to walk through different parts of his ship every day. He wanted to see his crew and make sure everyone was ready for what was coming. These weren't ordinary soldiers he was leading into battle. Every single person on his ship had been chosen from millions of applicants. They were the smartest, strongest, and most dedicated people that Earth had ever produced. In the engineering sections, he watched teams of specialists checking and rechecking every system on the ship. These men and women understood technology that most humans couldn't even imagine. They could repair fusion reactors with their eyes closed and build new weapon systems from spare parts. In the pilot training areas, he saw the fighter crews practicing in advanced simulators. These pilots could fly their small ships through asteroid fields at incredible speeds, dodging obstacles that would destroy normal aircraft. They had trained for years to reach this level of skill. The medical bays were staffed with doctors who had studied alien biology for decades, preparing for the day when they might need to treat wounds caused by weapons that didn't exist on Earth. The communications teams spoke dozens of alien languages and could break enemy codes in minutes. As Captain Kim walked through the ship's main corridor, his second-in-command approached him. Commander Yoon Minji was a small woman with sharp eyes and a mind that worked faster than most computers. She had been his partner for over 10 years, and he trusted her judgment completely. "Captain," she said, holding a digital tablet in her hands, "the ship's artificial intelligence has finished running combat simulations against the Vorthak fleet. I think you need to see these results." They walked together to a private briefing room where holographic displays showed detailed battle scenarios. The ship's AI had analyzed everything humans knew about Vorthak technology and fighting tactics, then run thousands of simulated battles to predict what would happen when the two fleets met. "Our tactical advantage is enormous," Commander Yoon explained, pointing to the holographic battle scenes. "Their weapons can't penetrate our armor. Their ships are too slow to avoid our missiles, and their organic technology has weaknesses they don't even know about. Captain Kim studied the simulations carefully. The results showed the same thing over and over again, complete human victory in every scenario, but he knew that real battles were never as simple as computer simulations made them look. "Remember what we learned in the academy," he told his commander. "We go in peace when possible, but when someone attacks innocent humans, we respond with force that ends the threat permanently." This had been Earth's philosophy for centuries. Humans preferred to make friends and trade partners rather than enemies. But when forced to fight, they fought to win so completely that their enemies would never want to fight them again. Meanwhile, far away in Vorthak space, their military scouts were detecting strange readings on their instruments. Massive gravitational disturbances were moving through space toward their territory, bigger than anything they had ever seen before. The Vorthak scientists looked at the readings and decided they must be natural space phenomena, like moving black holes or colliding neutron stars. It never occurred to them that 12 human warships could be large enough to bend space around them. This mistake would cost them everything. The moment the 12 human ships arrived at the edge of the Kepler system, everything changed. 1 second there was empty space, and the next second 12 massive objects materialized out of nowhere, their hulls gleaming like polished mirrors under the light of distant stars. The Vorthak fleet was still celebrating their victory over the human colonies. Their bioships floated lazily around the conquered planet, their crews enjoying victory feasts and planning how to divide up the human settlements among themselves. They had grown comfortable and careless, believing that no force in the galaxy could challenge their supremacy. Then their sensors started screaming. On every Vorthak ship, alarm systems that had never been triggered before suddenly came alive. The organic computers that ran their vessels began producing sounds they had never made, high-pitched wails that hurt the crew members' sensitive hearing. Warning lights that had been installed but never used began flashing frantically. Admiral Thexmar was in his private chambers, enjoying a meal of live creatures that squirmed as he ate them, when his communications officer burst through the door without permission. "Admiral," the smaller Vorthak gasped, his forearms waving wildly in panic. "Our sensors are detecting massive energy signatures at the system's edge. 12 objects, each one larger than our biggest dreadnought." Thexmar's mandibles stopped, clicking as he processed this information. In his hundreds of years of military service, he had never encountered ships that could match the size of Vorthak vessels. Their biotechnology allowed them to grow ships that were kilometers long, far bigger than the metal ships that other species built. He rushed to his bridge, where chaos was erupting. His crew members were running between stations, trying to understand what their instruments were telling them. The energy readings they were getting didn't match anything in their databases. "Show me," Thexmar commanded, and the main display screen flickered to life. What he saw made his blood run cold. 12 ships hung in space like metal mountains, each one so large that they blocked out sections of the star field behind them. They were perfectly shaped, with smooth lines that suggested incredible engineering skill. Unlike Vorthak bioships, which grew in organic curves, these vessels had been designed and built with mathematical precision, but it was the energy readings that truly terrified him. Each ship was producing power signatures that dwarfed entire Vorthak battle fleets. Their reactors alone were more powerful than the engines that moved Vorthak capital ships. "Send a message," Thexmar ordered, trying to keep his voice steady. "Tell them to identify themselves or face destruction." The message was transmitted across space at light speed, reaching the human fleet in seconds. On the bridge of Terra's Vengeance, Captain Kim received the transmission and immediately forwarded it to Fleet Admiral Lee Minho, who was commanding the entire operation from his flagship. Admiral Lee sat in his command chair, surrounded by holographic displays that showed every detail of the Vorthak fleet. His ship's advanced sensors had already analyzed every enemy vessel, identifying their weapons, shields, crew numbers, and weaknesses. The human computers had catalogued everything in the time it took a human heart to beat twice. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "the Vorthak Admiral is demanding that we identify ourselves and threatening to destroy us if we don't comply." Admiral Lee almost smiled. The alien commander had no idea what he was dealing with. These weren't the outdated patrol ships that had protected the human colonies. These were Earth's true warships, built with technology that the galaxy had never seen before. "Open a channel," Lee commanded, his voice calm and controlled. "Let me speak to their admiral directly." The communication link crackled to life, and Admiral Lee's voice reached every ship in both fleets simultaneously. "This is Fleet Admiral Lee Minho of the Earth Defense Fleet," he said, each word carefully chosen. "You have attacked and destroyed human civilian settlements. You have murdered innocent men, women, and children who came in peace. I am offering you one chance to surrender immediately, and we can discuss terms for your survival." He paused for a moment, letting his words sink in across the alien fleet. "If you refuse this offer, you will learn why Earth has remained unconquered for thousands of years, and why no species in the galaxy has ever successfully threatened humanity's home system." On the Vorthak flagship, Admiral Thexmar's mandibles began clicking rapidly in what his species considered laughter. The idea that these newcomers could threaten the mighty Vorthak Empire seemed ridiculous to him. He had no idea he was about to face the full fury of humanity's hidden war machine. Admiral Thexmar's laughter echoed through his bioship's bridge, a harsh clicking sound that made his crew members shiver with anticipation. He had fought countless battles across the galaxy, destroying civilizations that had existed for thousands of years. In his mind, these newcomers were just another species that needed to learn their place in the cosmic order. "Primitive mammals," he sneered into his communication device, making sure his contempt was clear in every word. "Do you really think your metal toys can stand against millions of years of Vorthak biological evolution? We have conquered 100 worlds with fleets, much larger than yours." His mandibles clicked together rapidly as he turned to his weapons officer, a scarred veteran of dozens of campaigns. "Show these humans what real warfare looks like. Fire everything we have." The Vorthak biofleet immediately responded to their admiral's command. Hundreds of organic ships began pulsing with deadly energy as their living weapons systems came online. These weren't mechanical guns like other species used. Instead, the Vorthak had evolved their ships to literally spit death at their enemies. From the bellies of the bioships, massive pods began launching into space. Each pod was the size of a small building and filled with acid so powerful it could eat through the hull of any known starship in seconds. The acid had been developed over millions of years of evolution, designed to dissolve any material that existed in nature. Behind the acid pods came streams of superheated plasma, glowing, balls of energy that burned hotter than the surface of most stars. These plasma bursts had melted entire fleets in previous battles, turning enemy ships into glowing slag that drifted through space like deadly confetti. The attack was overwhelming in its intensity. Thousands of deadly projectiles streaked across the emptiness between the two fleets, creating a light show that could be seen from the planet's surface below. Any normal fleet would have been completely destroyed within the first few seconds, but the human ships weren't normal. As the Vorthak weapons approached the 12 massive Dreadnoughts, something incredible happened. Along the hulls of each human ship, thousands of small turrets suddenly came alive. These weren't manned by human gunners. Instead, they were controlled by artificial intelligence systems that could track and target hundreds of incoming threats simultaneously. The turrets moved with mechanical precision that no living creature could match. They swiveled and adjusted their aim faster than the human eye could follow, calculating the trajectory of every incoming acid pod and plasma burst with mathematical perfection. Then they opened fire. Streams of laser light and high-velocity projectiles erupted from the human ships, creating a defensive wall of destruction that intercepted every single Vorthak weapon before it could reach its target. The acid pods exploded harmlessly in space, their deadly contents scattered into the void. The plasma bursts were cooled and dispersed by precisely aimed cooling beams. In less than 30 seconds, the entire Vorthak attack had been neutralized, without a single human ship taking any damage. On the bridge of Terra's Vengeance, Captain Kim watched the defensive display with professional satisfaction. His crew had trained for decades to operate these systems, but seeing them work in real combat was still impressive. Admiral Lee, he reported over the fleet communication channel, Enemy weapons have been completely ineffective against our defensive systems. All ships reporting 0 damage. The silence that followed was profound. Across the Vorthak fleet, alien commanders stared at their instruments in disbelief. Their most powerful weapons, the ones that had destroyed entire civilizations, had been brushed aside like annoying insects. Admiral Lee's voice cut through the silence, broadcast on all frequencies so that every ship in both fleets could hear his words clearly. "This is your final warning," he said, his tone still calm but now carrying an undertone of steel that made smart beings very nervous. "Stand down your weapons and prepare to surrender, or you will face the full consequences of your actions against innocent human civilians." As he spoke, the 12 human dreadnoughts began moving into their battle formation. The ships spread out across space like a perfectly coordinated dance, each one taking its assigned position with graceful precision. Their massive hulls blocked out entire sections of stars, creating dark patches in the night sky that seemed to swallow light itself. The message was clear. Humanity had given the Vorthak every chance to avoid what was coming next. What happened next wasn't really a battle in the traditional sense. It was more like watching a master craftsman demonstrate their skills to a group of children who had never seen real tools before. The Vorthak had expected a fight between equals, but instead they were about to witness the terrifying efficiency of human military engineering. The first weapons to fire were the railguns mounted along the sides of each human dreadnought. These weren't like any guns that existed elsewhere in the galaxy. Instead of using explosives or energy beams, they used massive electromagnetic fields to accelerate solid metal projectiles to incredible speeds. Each railgun fired a tungsten rod, about the size of a telephone pole. Tungsten was one of the hardest metals that humans had ever discovered, and when accelerated to 10% of light speed, it became the most devastating weapon imaginable. The rods moved so fast that they were invisible to the naked eye, appearing as brief flashes of light as they tore through space. When the first tungsten rod hit a Vorthak capital ship, the result was spectacular and horrible. The bioship, which had taken decades to grow and had survived hundreds of battles, simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a massive living vessel pulsing with bioluminescent lights, and the next moment there was nothing but an expanding cloud of glowing gas and debris. The impact released so much energy that it created a brief artificial star, bright enough to be seen from the planet's surface below. The shockwave from the explosion damaged nearby Vorthak vessels, causing their organic hulls to crack and bleed strange fluids into the vacuum of space. But the railguns were just the beginning. On the bridge of Terra's Vengeance, Weapons Officer Han Seojun sat at his control station, surrounded by displays that showed the positions of every enemy ship. He was a quiet man who had spent 20 years studying the art of space warfare, and now he was finally able to put his knowledge to use. "Fusion missiles ready for launch, Captain," he announced, his fingers dancing across the control panels with practiced precision. "Target solutions locked on enemy battle groups 7 through 12. Captain Kim nodded grimly. "Fire when ready." The fusion missiles that launched from the human ships were nothing like the nuclear weapons that Earth had built centuries earlier. These were controlled nuclear reactions, carefully designed to produce specific effects rather than just raw destruction. Each missile contained enough explosive power to level a small city. But that wasn't their primary purpose. When the missiles detonated in the middle of Vorthak formations, they created massive electromagnetic pulses that spread out like invisible waves of destruction. The pulses didn't harm living creatures directly, but they completely shut down any electronic or bioelectric systems they touched. Across the Vorthak fleet, ships that had been fighting for millions of years suddenly went dark. Their organic computers stopped thinking, their weapons stopped firing, and their engines stopped working. Entire squadrons of warships became helpless chunks of dead meat floating in space, unable to fight or even move. But the most impressive weapon on the human ships was something that most of the Vorthak never even saw coming. Along the front of Terra's Vengeance, a massive cannon ran the entire length of the ship's 15-kilometer hull. This spinal-mounted particle cannon was the most powerful weapon that humanity had ever built. When Captain Kim gave the order to fire, the cannon gathered energy from all 12 of the ship's fusion reactors, and focused it into a beam of pure destruction. The beam was so intense that it bent light around itself, creating a dark tunnel through space that seemed to swallow everything it touched. The particle beam cut through the Vorthak fleet like a sword through paper. Every ship it touched was instantly vaporized, turned into individual atoms that scattered across the solar system. In a single shot, Captain Kim's flagship destroyed over a third of the enemy fleet, including several of their largest and most powerful vessels. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted exactly 31 minutes from start to finish. When it was over, the mighty Vorthak biofleet had been reduced to floating debris, and a handful of badly damaged ships trying desperately to escape. Admiral Thexmar's flagship had been crippled by one of the electromagnetic pulses, leaving him trapped on a ship that could barely maintain life support. His communication system was damaged, but he managed to send out a weak transmission that reached both fleets. "I surrender," he broadcast, his voice broken and defeated. "The Vorthak Empire surrenders unconditionally. Please, please show mercy." For the first time in their species' history, the Vorthak had met an enemy they could not defeat. The news of the Vorthak fleet's complete destruction spread across the galaxy faster than anyone could have imagined. Within hours of the battle's end, emergency communication channels that had never been used before suddenly came alive with frantic messages from every corner of known space. On distant crystal worlds, the leaders of the Helix Federation held emergency meetings in their diamond halls. These ancient beings had ruled their part of the galaxy for over 50,000 years, building an empire based on careful diplomacy and technological superiority. They had never seen anything like what the humans had just accomplished. The energy, readings from the battle are impossible, one crystal being chimed to another, their body resonating with worried musical tones. No species should be able to generate that much power from ships of that size. Within their first hour of deliberation, the Helix Federation had already drafted a formal trade agreement proposal and sent it racing toward Earth at maximum communication speed. They offered access to their most advanced crystal technology, rare mineral rights from a dozen star systems, and exclusive trade partnerships that had never been offered to any other species. Meanwhile, in the gas clouds of the nebula sector, the Drift Collective was having a very different kind of discussion. These beings existed as living storms, intelligent weather patterns that could think and build amazing technology without ever having physical bodies. Their swirling forms moved through the gas clouds with agitation as they processed what they had witnessed. The Drift Collective had always relied on their ability to hide in nebulae and gas clouds where solid beings couldn't follow them, but the human ships had sensors that could apparently track anything, anywhere. "We need protection," one storm being communicated to the others through electrical pulses. "If they can find us in our own clouds, we have no defense against them." The Drift Collective's message to Earth was simple and direct. They wanted a defensive alliance. They offered to share their advanced stealth technology and provide early warning systems throughout their territory in exchange for protection against any future threats. But perhaps the most interesting response came from the Gear Assembly, the collective of artificial intelligences that had replaced their original creators thousands of years ago. These mechanical minds operated massive factory worlds that never stopped producing new technology and robotic servants. The Gear Assembly's computers had recorded every detail of the human battle, analyzing the weapon systems, ship designs, and tactical formations with mathematical precision. Their calculations were both fascinating and terrifying. Probability of successful resistance against human military, 0.003%, their main computer network concluded. Recommendation: immediate alliance negotiations with maximum concessions. The mechanical beings immediately began calculating what they could offer to make themselves valuable to humanity. They proposed sharing their automated manufacturing technology, offering to build human ship designs in their factories, and providing maintenance services for the entire human fleet. On the bridge of Terra's vengeance, Commander Yoon Minji found herself overwhelmed by the flood of incoming diplomatic messages. Her communication station, which normally handled routine fleet coordination, was now receiving priority transmissions from civilizations that most humans had never even heard of. "Captain Kim," she called out, barely able to keep up with the incoming traffic. "We're receiving formal diplomatic overtures from 17 different star nations, and more are coming in every few minutes." Captain Kim walked over to her station and looked at the list of species trying to contact them. There were names on the list that appeared in ancient human exploration records, civilizations that had refused all previous contact attempts from Earth's peaceful diplomatic missions. "Some of these are species that wouldn't even talk to our ambassadors before," Commander Yoon noted with amazement. "The crystalline monarchies, the void shepherds, the machine collective of Sector 7, they all ignored us when we tried to establish peaceful relations. But now these same proud civilizations were practically begging for the chance to ally themselves with humanity. They offered technology, resources, territory, and anything else they thought might interest their new galactic neighbors. The most dramatic change was in how other species talked about humans. Before the battle, most aliens had referred to humans as the new species, or those metal shipbuilders. Now the communications were filled with respectful titles: the honored Earth Empire, the mighty human fleet, and the protectors of Sol. Within a single day, the entire political structure of the galaxy had shifted. The Vorthak Empire, which had dominated through fear and military might for thousands of years, was now a broken shadow of its former self. Their remaining ships were fleeing to distant corners of space, hoping to avoid any further contact with human forces. In their place, humanity had suddenly become the new apex predator of the galaxy. Every alien civilization now understood that Earth was not just another planet with some moderately advanced technology. It was the home of a species that had been quietly building the most powerful military force in galactic history. The age of Vorthak dominance was over, ended in 31 minutes by 12 ships that no one had even known existed. The galaxy would never be the same again. Admiral Lee Minho stood on the command bridge of Terra's Vengeance, looking down through the massive viewing windows at the planet below. Just hours ago, this world had been under the control of alien invaders who had murdered thousands of innocent human families. Now it was free again, and the rescue ships were already landing to help the survivors who had managed to hide during the occupation. The planet's surface was scarred from the battle that had taken place weeks earlier, but already human engineering teams were working to repair the damage. Green fields that had been burned by alien weapons were being replanted, and the small cities that human colonists had built were coming back to life. Admiral Lee felt a deep sense of satisfaction as he watched the recovery efforts. This is what humanity did best. They built things, they helped people, and they made places better than they found them. But when someone threatened their peaceful way of life, they also knew how to fight back with devastating effectiveness. His communications officer approached him with a special transmission device, one designed to broadcast across the entire galaxy simultaneously. This would be the most important message that humanity had ever sent to alien civilizations, and Admiral Lee wanted to make sure every word was perfect. "Sir, all galactic communication networks are ready to receive your broadcast," the young officer reported. "Every major civilization will hear this message within the next few hours." Admiral Lee took the device and walked to the center of his bridge, where cameras would capture his image and transmit it to billions of alien beings across thousands of worlds. He was still wearing his battle uniform, and his face showed the quiet confidence of someone who had just accomplished something that many people had thought was impossible. When he began to speak, his voice was calm and measured, but it carried the authority of someone who commanded the most powerful military force in the galaxy. "To all the peoples and civilizations of our galaxy," he began, "I am Fleet Admiral Lee Minho of the Earth Defense Fleet. I speak to you today from above the liberated world of Kepler 442b, where human families are once again free to live in peace." He paused for a moment, letting his words be translated into hundreds of different alien languages by automatic systems that would carry his message to every corner of known space. "Humanity has always sought to explore the stars in peace. We have offered friendship, trade, and cooperation to every species we have encountered. We have shared our knowledge, our culture, and our technology with those who were willing to work with us as equals. As he spoke, images of human exploration missions flashed across communication screens throughout the galaxy. Alien viewers saw human scientists working alongside alien researchers, human engineers helping to build better cities on alien worlds, and human doctors treating patients from dozens of different species. But let this message be clear to all who would threaten innocent human lives, Admiral Lee continued, his voice taking on a harder edge. Any aggression against human civilians, any attack on human colonies, any act of war against peaceful human settlements will be met with the full force of Earth's military might. The images now showed the recent battle, with human dreadnoughts effortlessly destroying the mighty Vorthak fleet. Alien leaders across the galaxy watched in amazement as they saw the true power that humanity had been keeping hidden for centuries. "We do not seek to conquer or dominate," the Admiral explained. "We do not want to rule over other species or force our way of life on anyone else. But we will protect our people, our colonies, and our way of life with absolute determination." As his broadcast continued, the 12 massive human dreadnoughts were already moving into new positions throughout human-controlled space. Each ship took responsibility for protecting a different region, creating an invisible network of protection that covered every human settlement in the galaxy. These ships would patrol constantly, their advanced sensors watching for any sign of threat to human civilians. Their crews would live aboard these vessels for years at a time, dedicated guardians, ensuring that no alien force would ever again be able to surprise and destroy human colonies. "The galaxy is vast enough for all of us to prosper together," Admiral Lee concluded his message. "Humanity extends its hand in friendship to all peaceful species, but to those who mistake our kindness for weakness, remember what you have witnessed today." The broadcast ended, but its effects would be felt for generations. Across the galaxy, alien civilizations now understood that humanity was not just another minor species trying to find its place among the stars. They were a major power with the ability to enforce their will when necessary. But perhaps most importantly, in secret shipyards hidden throughout the Sol system, other massive shapes continued their slow construction. The 12 dreadnoughts that had just shocked the galaxy were only the beginning. Humanity had learned the most important lesson of galactic politics. Peace was only possible when you were strong enough to defend it. The stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter that day, as if the universe itself was acknowledging that a new chapter in galactic history had begun.